I'm Pierre Fitter and you're watching The Big Budget Theory.
And I'm Simi Pasha.
Now, if you think this is going to be another boring show with complex statistics, economic data, market analysis and all of that other stuff, and you're about to switch off, wait up.
This is our way of making you and people like Pierre here understand how the government works and why it's important for us to know basic budget theories.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Pasha. But anyway, Narendra Modi begins his term as Prime Minister with some things working in his favor, but a few things going rather badly.
We're all waiting for Achhe Din to come around, but here's why it could take a little longer than expected for the NDA government to deliver on its poll promises.
Wheels of the economy are turning again. But here is where the national economy stands today. At this point, the economy is growing at its slowest in 10 years. And why is that? Largely due to faltering industrial production. Although agriculture has substantially increased its output, that has failed to keep a check on inflation, which has more than doubled over the last few years. But despite a serious cut in deficit in the last 3 years, exports are finally on a revival path. And that has helped reduce current account deficit dramatically, giving some hope to the national economy.
Right, now that Pierre and I have been able to make you sit through Economics 101, here's lesson number 2.
Have you ever wondered why the government keeps making promises to build new roads and highways, but you never actually see them?
Well, that's because they have no money. Don't panic, we're not bankrupt.
Yeah, but we seem to be spending our money on the wrong things and rather inefficiently.
What is the state of the government's finances? Tax revenues have increased, but not enough to keep up with the government's income needs. As a result, the government has had to slash new investment. That has helped marginally rein in the revenue deficit. But a lot of it has to do with an 82% rise in populist spending.
Right, this one for all you warmongers out there. Every time there's a budget, the same old voices start, that same old boring debate about guns versus butter.
But you know what? It's actually a valid debate because money doesn't grow on trees and the government has only so much money it can spend. The money it spends on weapons means there's money that it's not spending on food and medicines and books for kids.
Alright, so here's how much India spends on its military and how that stacks up against the other big countries.
Do you know what your government spends the most on? Is it health? Not really. Education then? Nope. Must be food. Wrong again. Add all these together. India spends that much on defense, almost 2.5% of its GDP. And the amount has really spiked. Back in 1992, India's military bill was just 17,500 crore. Today, we spend 1,93,407 crore on defense, an increase of 1,005% in 20 years. Where does this money go? Nearly 50% on pensions and salaries of personnel and 41% on new purchases. In total, India spends more on its defense than even the GDP of some countries like North Korea, Afghanistan and Nepal. So you think we spend too much on defense? Not exactly. Our rival China is way ahead. So is Japan. And so is UK. But the big daddy of all is, of course, the United States. Uncle Sam spends more on defense than all the countries of the world put together. Now what do you think? Is India's defense budget too big or too small?
Right, so we aren't spending so much on defense, but where is all the money going?
Yeah, in fact, lakhs of crores are going on something called subsidies. And the politicians say that we need subsidies because it helps the poor. But the truth is, something like a diesel subsidy goes towards someone who drives a giant SUV. Is that really needed?
See that elephant? It's in the FM's room and it's called subsidy. In 7 years, India's subsidy bill has grown from 45,000 crore to over 2 lakh crore. The biggest jump is for fertilizers by over 3,000%. Second is petroleum, over 2,000%. And third is food subsidy, nearly 180%. So where did all this money go? Not to those it was meant for. Less than 1 in 4 people who actually get subsidy really deserve it. And the money spent on subsidies could be spent in building highways, hospitals and bridges. At its best, subsidy is wasteful expenditure. At its worst, subsidy is a way to buy votes.
So here's another one. Do you know that when you buy a flight ticket from Mumbai to Delhi, you're actually paying for the journey from Delhi to Chandigarh as well?
When you're indulging yourself by buying 6 yards of pure silk, you actually might be paying for 7.
Now don't worry, there are no elves stealing your shopping away.
There are no elves, Pierre, and our viewers know that. I think the missing link is service tax.
Hey, going out for pizza now? Oops, too bad. You'll pay for a slice you won't eat. So cabbing to work 10 kilometers away. You don't even know you're paying for 11 kilometers, do you? Or are you going to call a friend now? You may pay for 45 minutes, but talk for only 40. So, who took away your 5 minutes? That pizza slice and the 1 kilometer? Was it a thief, or were they visitors from Mars? Neither really. It's the government of India. And what they're taking away is called service tax. Day and night, whenever you buy a service, you pay service tax. On almost everything. Little wonder, in 18 years, the Indian government service tax collections have gone up 304 times. They're taking it in bits and pieces from you, but it's one big bonanza for them.
Now it's July, and that means most of you would have just found out what your annual appraisals are.
Wafer thin ice, Pierre, it's a sensitive subject.
Now, we all have complaints, don't we? But the larger point is that in spite of your salary hikes, our spending capacity doesn't seem to be increasing.
And that's because tax slabs don't take inflation into account.
Here's what Mr. Jaitley can do to make our lives a little easier.
Your tax has gone up and you don't even know it. Here's how. If your salary was rupees 10 lakhs in 2010 and you got an average increment of 10% annually, now your salary would be rupees 14.6 lakhs. That may seem like a substantial growth at first glance, but your real income with inflation figures shows an increment of only 1% over the last 4 years. However, you are paying tax on rupees 14.6 lakhs, though your real income is only rupees 10.4 lakhs. Now the big question is, can Mr. Jaitley help you? The answer is yes. Linking tax slabs to inflation rate is the best way to ensure you get maximum out of your hard-earned income.
I'm probably going to get a lot of flack for this, but I'm not a bleeding heart, so I'm not going to actually be protesting against that rail fare hike.
All right, what we're asking from the NDA government is to make our railways faster, safer and more efficient. You don't mind spending a few extra bucks if you know you'll be reaching your destination alive.
Mr. Railway Minister, you can increase rail fares again, but only if you can. 1. Make our journeys safer. After all, a fare hike would be a small price to pay for a safe journey. These are the number of people who have been killed or injured at the hands of the Indian Railways over the last few years. 2. Make our journeys shorter. Trains in China go to Shanghai from Beijing, a distance of 1318 kilometers in just 5 hours. Mumbai to Delhi is just 66 kilometers longer, but the so-called superfast Rajdhani takes 16 hours or more. 3. Make booking tickets easier. Touts seem to have easier access to tickets than commuters. In fact, rupees 22 lakh is the value of tickets seized just in Mumbai this year, which is more than double rupees 9 lakh seized during the same period last year. And last but not the least, make our stations and trains cleaner. There's no denying that our railway stations are some of the dirtiest in the world. So, railway fare hike is okay, only if you can make our journeys safer, shorter, easier and cleaner.
Alright, now the purpose of this next story is not to make you spy on your neighbors.
No, it isn't. But do you know that if your friends and colleagues file their taxes on time, it means the pressure on you is lesser?
Yeah, and if you encourage them to file their taxes, you're not just helping the government get more money, you're also helping yourself.
And we all love doing that, don't we?
Is your neighbor paying his taxes or counting the taxes he just evaded? And why do we ask? Because higher the number of people who pay their taxes, the lower the tax rate for taxpayers gets. So if your neighbor is a taxpayer, you're both helping keep taxes as low as they can be. And if he's not, well, then that's trouble. Fortunately, the number of income tax payers have risen more than 4 times in 21 years. But it's still only around 1 in 50 people who pay tax. Today, a taxpayer has to pay a much lower share of his income than he did, say, 2 decades ago. Because more and more people are paying taxes. Lower tax rates hurt less, and so more and more people are willing to pay taxes, which could only lower them further. So don't expect Arun Jaitley to lower taxes this year, but do be grateful if your neighbor is paying his taxes.
Hey, here's a tricky one. Your company may be filing taxes on your salary, but there is a possibility that you are still breaking the law.
Do you know there's something called gift tax? It means if your mum buys you gold bangles, you need to declare them before the taxman.
And it's not just that, there are mandatory tax requirements that you may be flouting without even knowing it.
Not declaring interest income. Interest earned on your savings bank account is taxable if it exceeds Rs 10,000 a year. Also, interest earned on 5-year FDs has to be declared each year, even if the interest income is credited after 5 years. 2 rebates on a single investment. Well, if you change jobs, you probably got tax exemptions on your investments from both your employers. Whether you notice it or not, the taxman will, and he will make you pay the tax you saved plus interest. Forgetting to quote PAN. Well, the taxman has a simple solution for this sin. A 10,000 rupees fine. On certain transactions, the fine is even heavier at 20% of the tax deducted at source, or TDS. Not accounting for even a day's pay. Switch jobs? Don't miss reporting a single day's salary. The taxman knows just how much you earned each day through the TDS filed by your employers. Failure to report even a day's income is a crime. Not counting inheritance as income. Your grandmother left you jewelry and you didn't declare it. If the taxman finds out, he'll slap a penalty of up to 500%. Worse, if the tax due is more than Rs 1 lakh, he could send you to jail for up to 7 years. The way out? Pay wealth tax of 1% on assets worth more than Rs 30 lakhs.